Nicodemus here. On today's episode, I wanted to introduce our audience to the career that you spent the last 13 years building. You were a transformational trainer through multiple training centers. And I feel like one of the most important things that I learned while going through this 12 years ago was the four survival context. Can you go into that?
Yeah, and we can relate some of it to Course in Miracles too, and I'll take you through how we talk about it in the training. And we start off with making the distinction, and I'll work with the students on context creates content. I'll say that to them. I'll give them examples of this. Of well, what is context? So if I say, we're here in West Palm Beach, you know, palm trees grow down here. Palm trees do not grow in Manhattan. So I'll ask the students to say, well, what's context and what's content in that statement? Well, the context would be Manhattan and the content would be palm trees. So what we're saying, this might not sound like rocket science, but it's actually very powerful for your life, is that what we're saying is that context, Manhattan is not the right environment for palm trees. How do we know that? Because they don't grow there. So whatever the environment is, context, it creates what shows up in that environment. Or another way of saying is something cannot show up in your life without you being the space for it. I'll give you an example of this. It's like if you want to have a great marriage, but you're angry all the time. Well, a great marriage doesn't show up in the environment of angry all the time. It just doesn't show up in that. It doesn't, the content won't show up because the context, the space is not the space for it. Well, what does that look like for what we're talking about here? Well, the context that most human beings are living in is a context of what we would call in the training is a context of survival. And that survival is this need to look good, this need to, be right, this need to be in control, this need to be safe. There's some subcategories like the need for approval and the need for comfort, which is a big one for all of us. These survival strategies, what they're really about is about how we try to avoid pain and make our way in the world. And what we do is we really they're set up is maybe as kids we did try to survive or at least our image of ourselves. And we thought that they protected us in the beginning, but what starts to happen for most human beings is it gets so ingrained in us that they're constantly operating from these survival contexts, these different ways of seeing the world. So the need to look good, right? People throw their whole life down the drain just to look good for family and the world out there, or maybe afraid to take risks in their life because of how they'll look if they fail. And it's not that looking good itself is bad. I mean, you can dress up nice and, you maybe wear a suit to work or and looking good's great. It's the need to look good, the need to look a certain way to the world to fit a certain image that we have of ourselves. You start to see that all of these survival strategies are about the picture I have of myself, which the course would call becomes an idol. And then I seek for to protect this picture. All of these survival strategies that we're talking about in the training are a way of protecting the idol of the picture of myself. And one of the big ones that the course doesn't go into all of these, this would be more the training, but the course goes into one of them, and it's worth talking about today, is the need to be right. Now, what we would say in the training is you could boil all the survival strategies down to the need to be right. Let's say even the need to be in control. You might yourself or know others in relationship, they have this need to be in control because why? If they feel out of control, that makes them feel unsafe. They feel they don't like that feeling. And then what ends up happening is that need to be in control. They need it so much that it ends up controlling them, and they always feel out of control. So if we go down to the need to be right, this is a huge one for us. I mean, being right is almost like we're addicted to it as human beings. I mean, just look around the world that we live in. Social media, all these things, people want to be right. Now, what does the course say about this? Is that this need to be right. See, we wouldn't say this in the training like this. I work with students and talk about the need to be right, the need to be in control, safety, the need for comfort, and, as I take them through exercise and processes and things like that. Now, when you come to the course takes the need to be right even deeper because what Jesus says in the course is that our need to be right is really directed against God. And we want to be so right about what we made, the ego, the voice for the ego, and really duality, separation, all of this we made. we'll go into that on another video, but for the purpose of this video is we made separation, we made fear and all of that. God did not create it. And since we made it, we can also choose again. We could choose to see it differently, but we'd have to be willing to let go of that need to be right about what we made. It's literally like we made the voice of the ego of separation, and then we put it on the altar and gave our allegiance over to it because we want what we made to be right over what God created. I know that that sounds deep. Just think about it though for a moment. Like, look at how often that we operate out of survival. Think about how many times that the need to look good or be right or be in control or be safe, all these things uh, uh, it really pop up on a daily basis for most human beings. You know, I've done these trainings for thousands of people over the years, hundreds of trainings. Everybody shows up with running this in their operating system. So the need to be to look good, let's say, you know, well, when you start to realize that there's no need for me to look a certain way to the world because the world doesn't see me for me as spirit, they see an image of me. And I don't really see that's what I see in the world. We see images projected outward. When you start to realize that with all of these, the need to be safe, well, my safety comes from God. The need to be in control, well, I can't control future outcomes. So I place the future in the hands of God. Now, this need to be right one is a fascinating one. So, one of the things I'll read this real quick from chapter 29, section 7. Jesus says, seek not outside yourself, for it will fail, and you will weep each time an idol falls. So, all these are idols that we make. All of these, because what do? We try to manipulate the dream, manipulate out there so we can finally feel safe and whole and complete. He goes on, he says, heaven cannot be found where it's not, and there can be no peace except there in heaven. Each idol that you worship when God calls will never answer in his place. There is no other answer you can substitute and find the happiness his answer brings. Seek not outside yourself. For all, I love this line, for all your pain comes simply from a futile search for what you want, insisting where it must be found. What if it's not there? So all those survival strategies is this idea that I know where my salvation, my wholeness, my peace comes from. And if I could just manipulate the life and the world out there so I could feel safe and look good and feel in control and be right and feel comfortable, if I could do it just enough, I'll finally get it. But it never works for anyone. And it can't. Why? Because it says you're insisting where you're for all seek not outside yourself. For all your pain comes simply from a futile search for what you want, insisting where it must be found. What if it's not there? Do you prefer that you be right or happy? Which is it? Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Be glad that you're told where happiness abides and seek no longer elsewhere. You will fail, but it is giving you to know the truth and not to seek for it outside yourself. No one who comes here but must still have hope, some lingering illusion or some dream that there's something outside of himself that will bring happiness and peace to him. If everything is in him, this cannot be so. So what does that mean for you? Everything is in you that Jesus is saying. So think about that really practically. That means nothing in the world could add to you and nothing in the world could take away from you. So the idea of trying to survive in an image that we have in our mind to try to be right about it and protect it is insanity. It's madness that we do this. So the question becomes is, do we want to be right or do we want to be happy? The happiness is surrendering everything of what I think everything should look like over to the Holy Spirit. And I'm given a new way of seeing the world where I'm no longer trying to survive. I'm now thriving. I'm connected to God. I'm feeling operating from peace and bringing back to where we started is when I operate from that context of peace, of joy, of freedom, the content in that shows up in my life, or as the Course of Miracles will call it, the form that shows up in my life, it reflects which teacher I learn from, which thought system that I listen to, and my life radically gets altered as a result of it.